Good morning, everybody. What a wonderful looking group we have here. And I must say, this group of commissioners are some of the most handsome I believe I've ever seen. It's the most handsome we've got, almost. Except for Jeremy. I hope everybody had a chance to enjoy the Harvest Moon last night. That was pretty good. All right, we're gonna call to order here and get going. So the first thing we're going to do is do our roll call, and Christy, well, we're going to stall a minute here.
I got it.
She stepped out, so go pick up.
All right, Megan.
Yeah, let me have a list.
Megan Perkins will fill in and do our roll call for us.
All right, Commissioner Glover,
Here.
Commissioner Burr, Commissioner Neil Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner William Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner Joanne Bush, Commissioner Bush, Commissioner Leggett,
Here.
Commissioner Reeves, Commissioner Brewer, Commissioner McDermott.
Here.
Okay, and I think probably a couple of these people have been delayed, and they'll be here in a minute. So, but we have a quorum, so we're gonna get going. So the first thing we're gonna do is consider our minutes. Everybody's had a chance to read over those, look at them. So what about the minutes? Do we have any corrections or anything to change? If not, we'll
Make a motion with that. I'll make a second.
all right, we have a motion and second. All in favor of adopting the minutes? Yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. So that passes. Our next item of business are reports, and first we have the director's report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a few things real quick. We've been working on the state water plan. Many of you may have seen some of the items that came out in the press. We were able to complete phase 1 of that, which was programmatic work plan, a schedule, and a cost estimate for doing phase 2 of the water plan. So we've accomplished that step. Now we're working on phase 2. So we've already entered into an agreement with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to do certain components of the state water plan. So first 2 components that we'll be looking at is water supply and infrastructure. And so we hope to have a contractor on board in November. Prior to that, we will host some stakeholder focus group meetings where we pull in some of the folks that really work in those arenas and pull them together and put our heads together, start talking about what are some of the things that the 2014 plan did not address or that we need to look at today that's different than 2014. So that process is going. Our goal is to complete the water plan by September of 26. So we got a lot of work to do, and we're getting started as soon as possible. The Alliance project, you've heard me talk about this project before. This is our project with Virginia Tech, but that application period actually went live on August 21st, and it will close on September 25th. So we're working in 6 counties. Arkansas, Drew, Lincoln, Jefferson, St. Francis, and Cleveland. This will pay about $100 an acre for landowner payments to implement certain conservation practices. And so we're underway. As of yesterday, we had 141 applications in that program. So we expect a lot more before it closes later this month. We're going to tour the irrigation projects today. And so you'll get to see them, but we had the ASA, so the Assistant Secretary of the Army was here. So this is like
I remember
the official in the Civil Works section. It went really well. He toured both irrigation projects, and really the takeaway that I got from his visit was that he praised Arkansas on trying to work on the issues before it hits critical mass. He came from the western part of the U.S. and they're not so fortunate. So he did applaud us for our efforts and for the level of partnership that we have in Arkansas. We have 2 federal agencies, we have multiple state agencies, we have 2 irrigation districts that are all working on these projects. And so he recognized that. as you've heard me report in the past as well, we've been working on the Days Creek mitigation bank. So this is a mitigation bank that we own, but that program was dissolved in 2017. So we've been working with the highway department to try to transfer that piece of property to them. And so we're getting very close. We've actually agreed on a price, which is $2 million. It has wetland and stream credits, which they need. And so this will be a good thing for them. It'll be a good thing for us because we don't really need it since we don't have that program anymore. So we're just working through the paperwork on that, and hopefully we'll get that transferred to them here pretty soon. And then last, but certainly not least, I have to point out that Commissioner Bush was inducted into the Arkansas Women's Hall of Fame in August.
Yay! Got an all-star.
I don't know if you did that.
Got an all-star.
Yeah. But she is, so this is, I'm gonna read a little bit from the bio.
Oh, no, you don't have to do that. I mean, you
Yeah,
She is one of the longest serving municipal officers in the state. And so she began her career in 1973 in Lake Village, served as mayor for 28 years after that, and now works with communities as a municipal league rep, so. And even helps us, because I call on Joanne when I need some help with some communities, we're working on water and wastewater things, so anyway, just wanted to let everybody know that.
Thank you.
So that concludes my.
Okay, Joanne, we would want a speech, but we don't have time. We've got.
That's right, I was late, so. Excuse me, Mr. Bruce.
Okay, our financial report. Mr. Zaki, how are you today?
Pretty good, sir.
Oh, I think everybody's pretty good here.
Good morning, members. On the financial report, not a whole lot to report for this period. On the Water Development Fund, total resources provided through the end of this reporting period total a little over $154,000, with disbursements at $557,000 as of August 31st, 2024. I'm reporting 3 new requests for financial assistance under the Water Development Fund, totaling $231,000, and 1 de-obligation for $2.7 million. So this leaves $8,028,483 available for future water development projects. On the water, sewer, solid waste, disbursements total $88,000 through the end of this reporting period. Disbursements total $825,000, with resources provided at $88,637. With no new obligation to report, we have 1 de-obligation in the amount of $65,920, leaving $8,990,000 available for future water, sewer, solid waste project. On the general obligation bonds, disbursement total $10 million through the end of this reporting period. As of today, we're showing $6.2 million in total unobligated fund GO bond. And that concludes the financial report.
Thank you, Mr. Zaki. Very good. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Zaki on financial report here? Okay, man, appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, our legal report, we're gonna delay for just a. Oh, all right.
I made it. I made it.
All right, Tanner.
Happy to be here.
Sorry I didn't see you back there.
No worries. I slipped in. I'm happy to be here on time. I don't know if you step in the same river twice. It's an age-old question, but I know from experience you never step on the same I-30 twice. It is hard to ascertain. I've been taking that road to work for probably about 4 years, so maybe not. Well, so happy to see everybody. The board of commissioners happy to be here. And so Gonna get into legal report on lighter matters. We've got two new water authorities that have been approved by the Secretary of State, Van Buren and Wildwood. And Van Buren, of course, is in Van Buren and Wildwood. I am going off the memory here. I'm not exactly sure where they're at, but congratulations to them. Got approved, moved over to nonprofit status on that. And on any sort of disciplinary matters, this may be getting into a little bit more detail in the water well constructor report. On that, we've drafted a consent agreement on Young's Custom Construction LLC. They met with the Water Well Constructors Committee earlier, and the owner has agreed to a consent agreement, agreed to two penalties of $250 apiece, and the committee's gone through different, kind of testing out into the approved different penalty matrix that is modeled on some of our other matrices in these other organizations here, kind of follows similar pattern and pattern of law of the maximum, and just follow that. There is also requirement to submit past due reports, I believe over the past 2-3 years, like
The licensing year, I believe it was. So back to last July,
that's last July, that's right.
July 23.
That's correct, 2023. And we get a little bit more details on how we want to handle that, and if you want approved to offer that consent agreement. I've got it drafted, we just have to have it approved, discussed, and then once we get that, we'll send it off to them, have them sign it, and come back. If you can still want to sign it, if you doesn't, you can face other consequences on it. So should the commission decide. And then on to a larger item that Chris and I have talked about a little bit. There was an expansion project proposed by Central Arkansas Water up around near Mobile, and I have the map in my head. I'm trying to remember where exactly that's at. But there has been a request by 4 individuals in that area to have the commission review decision to approve. Chris has the decision to give a stamp of approval on that under the Arkansas Water Plan and under the rules of the commission here. He has that authority after the applicant has been gone through the right requirements, public notice, and for their own water systems, they are required to report to other water systems and let them comment and go through the whole process there. There's a public reporting requirement. We put it in the Arkansas Democratic Gazette. We've gone through that. And now at this portion, any aggrieved party under Title I and Title VI of the commission's rule can request a review by the commission to see if Chris made the right decision based on the factors that he's supposed to consider or not. And in this instance, this is governed by the Arkansas Administrative Procedures Act, and it will have to be a hearing before this commission here. Our suggestion is that it be in the afternoon at some point, maybe about 1 o'clock, 1:30 of the next regularly scheduled commission meeting before the end of this year. And that gives a reasonable time for any of these individuals to provide legal counsel, obtain evidence that they want to submit. I have a notice of hearing drafted of these issues. The issues that are brought up by these individuals in these areas would be, did we comply with the public notice requirement? There was a question about whether Central Arkansas Water had properly notified the water systems in their area. And that's one big issue that may be a little bit more defined. And thirdly, I believe since Central Arkansas Water did acquire some assets of Y Water Association, there is an issue of Title VI on certain things and notification requirements when you've acquired other water systems assets. And that, I believe, is the third issue there. That's what I've ascertained from these complaints that have been sent to us or this request for review. And that's not presented here. I've got the notice hearing already drafted, and the commission as a line item would just have to approve date, time, place. I suggest we have here. We typically have these here. And then we go through the process, we'll get a hearing manager and then the court reporter for that. So that's the sum of the legal report. Is there any questions that you have?
You got any questions for Tanner? No. Tanner, we appreciate it. When I follow up on one thing
Go
that
right
Tanner said, we will reach, once we set the hearing date, we'll poll everybody, make sure they're all available. And, we'll try to do it in conjunction with the next commission meeting, which is scheduled for November. We'll work through that process and let everybody know. Thank you, Tanner.
Thank y'all.
Oh, Tanner, hang on, buddy. We gotta talk about Brushy Creek Public Water Authority. And we'll need to take a vote on this.
While Tanner's looking for me, you all have the articles of dissolution, in your packets, so.
All right, so Brushy Creek, and thank you for that reminder, Chris. Under Arkansas Code 435-111, the Arkansas Natural Resources Commission has authority to dissolve a public water authority when they request to do so. And the water authority may be dissolved upon filing articles of dissolution with the approval in writing by the commission. Approved by the commission, the articles of dissolution shall also be filed with the Secretary of State, which is something we will do after this meeting here. Upon dissolution, any assets of a water authority remaining after payment of claims and liabilities of the water authority shall be transferred to another water authority with approval of the commission or to the state of Arkansas or subdivision of the state, including the commission. So when Brushy Creek sent in their articles, and I believe this was back sometime in December or January before we had a legal team come on, and I think it got lost in the confusion of having a legal team. We have rule promulgation, and each of the commissioners and boards going through that. And so it's been brought to our attention here recently. They've applied for dissolution. They are still technically a public water authority and still technically active. However, practically speaking, they've surrendered their assets. They have provided the correct documentation in my review, and I look at these documents to say, hey, we've surrendered our assets to appropriate authority, and we've gone through the process. Here's our documentation, here's the resolutions. You all have those in the packet. And I believe that they have provided adequate legal notice and request for dissolution. And that would be a line item for this commission to approve or deny on that. So.
Okay, so what we would be considering and voting on is to dissolution of this water, of Brushy Creek
That's correct.
Water Authority. Y'all understand that? Have any questions on that?
On the date, it's got 23. That's supposed to be this year.
I believe it was submitted.
It was submitted.
December of last year.
Yeah, it was
Been on
actually,
the table that long.
we received it in January, and I'll take the blame on this one. We held it because at the time we didn't have our full legal team on board. And so once we got the legal team, I just completely forgot about it. And then I found it the other day and was like, man, we've got to do this. So I reached out to the parties involved and let them know that it'd be on the commission meeting for this meeting. So that's where we are.
Chris, on the signature page, the president has signed and then 2 board members, does that constitute a majority vote?
We'll have to check on that. So what they've done is they are now part of Central Arkansas Water, so they're gone.
Okay.
And so Central Arkansas Water sent us the request with their articles of dissolution. And so, and that's been reviewed by CAW's attorneys.
So you think this is?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we're good. I think it's just really a formality, that they be dissolved. Because they're already part of CAW. CAW is already managed them.
Does everybody understand what's going on there? Any questions about it? What's the commission's desire on it?
I move we approve it.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor, yes.
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 Opposed, no. Okay, that is taken care of.
Any other questions? On the-
Okay, next up, we have groundwater overview. Blake, hey Blake, there you go. Come on, Robin in here.
While Blake's getting ready, because we're doing the irrigation tours today, irrigation project tours, it's good to have a general understanding about the issues of like the groundwater issue. And then Megan's gonna give a presentation on the projects themselves so that you all have a little more information before we get out there today.
We thought we'd give you a little background on the region itself and the hydrogeology, geology of it, the well level trends, and I know I don't have a lot of time, so I'm gonna try to get through this relatively quickly. So just an overview of what the Grand Prairie is. We're in the Mississippi Delta. On this map, it's the Mississippi River alluvial plain, basically the ancestral Mississippi River laid out these river deposits across the whole east side of the state, as well as, Arkansas River, White River, and older rivers that used to exist in the area. So the defining features kind of are the White and Arkansas rivers. They basically form the boundary of it. And I'll show you that in a later slide. Here you can see the White River. But there's a delay in me. The Arkansas River here, the White River here. This is the Grand Prairie. Like if you heard about the ecoregion of the Grand Prairie, that was a true prairie. That's kind of what that looked like, prairie and savanna. And then this was kind of just the Arkansas River used to meander through here in different ways. There's a wall there. And so the area is defined by wetlands. We have the Mississippi River Valley alluvial aquifer throughout this whole area, the whole region. There in the yellow, that's all alluvial aquifer the first 150 feet or so. And then below that are some deeper aquifers and deeper sediments from further back in time. And one of the most defining features of this area is the clay layer. So there's a clay cap, I'm sure you've heard of, across the entire Mississippi Delta basically, but it varies in thickness. It's particularly thick here in the Grand Prairie. So this map here is actually a map of the thickness. So yellow is nothing to 3 meters. I know it's in meters, so it's gonna be hard to understand, but that's about 10 feet. And then the reds are up to about 50 feet thick. So you can see Arkansas County, Prairie County, and then the Lonoke County there. You have a very continuous swath of 50 feet or so thick clay. And then, like I was saying, on the other map here in kind of Lonoke, Jefferson County, where the rivers come through, it's kind of came through and eroded some of that clay away, and you have little kind of islands of the thicker clay. So the clay, as you probably know, is a low permeability. Water doesn't move through it very well, can't move down into it very well. And impedes infiltration to the aquifer below from the field. Things are not draining very well. Limits surface water recharge because of that to the aquifer below it. But it's great for holding water, and that's kind of a big part of this region's history is they figured out, hey, this is great for rice. They started growing rice on in the early 1900s. They started, that influenced the whole duck industry and kind of gave it its identity in a way, as we know it now. And so, like I was saying, this is a different way of kind of thinking about the clay thickness. This is the connectivity, so that range of permeability, the thicker clays not being very permeable to the aquifer. How connected are these regions to the aquifer below? So the blues are very connected, the reds are not very connected. So you can kind of see, this is the White River channel coming through, and here's the Arkansas River channel coming through. So this region, the deeper aquifer, is not really able to recharge from the surface in most of this area, where the darker reds are. But, it's getting a lot of its recharge from the river systems on the edge, and the water's having to come from the sides to recharge the aquifer in the middle. And that might make more sense when I show you a couple maps later. And actually, some of this clay is a particular clay they call the Stuttgart soil, which happens to be the Arkansas state soil since 1997. If you didn't know that, I didn't know that. Now you know. Stuttgart clay. All right, and like today, the land use of today, obviously there's very, very little, I think there's less than 1% I was reading of natural prairie land left, tall grass prairie or savanna, because we're, using it so widely for agriculture. So I pulled this is the 2023 USDA crop data layer. I know you probably can't see this very much, but 114,000 acres of soybeans kind of scattered around really the whole region, 70,000 acres of rice, which is the blue, 34,000 acres of corn, which is yellow, and less than 10,000 acres of cotton, which are kind of in West Lonoke and Jefferson County mainly. So I was kind of surprised how much there's 105,000 acres of what they're calling woody wetlands and almost 100,000 acres of evergreen forest. That kind of surprised me because it seems like driving through there measuring wells, it's 95% soybeans, but there's actually still a lot of wetland area. But that's kind of what they're doing with the land and the crops nowadays. It's a lot of soybeans. And I went back a few years and kind of pulled those acreages, and that doesn't really change a whole lot, at least in the last 3 or 4 years. So it's not like it's 114,000 acres of soybeans this year and next year it's going to be 114,000 acres of rice. It doesn't seem to be flip-flopping like that, but I'm sure they do rotate the crops around some. So anyway, groundwater. So, this area was recognized for having groundwater declines in the early 1900s. In 1931, actually, U.S. Senator Caraway, he did a study or had a study done and presented findings on groundwater level depletion due to overuse, irrigation, agriculture, just the land use changes that were happening in the area. So they were studying it as early as 1931. In 1991, we passed the Arkansas Groundwater Protection Management Act. In 1998, we designated the Grand Prairie there, that's Lonoke Prairie, Jefferson, Arkansas counties, as critical groundwater area for both the Mississippi River Valley alluvial aquifer and the Sparta aquifers. And so today we are, we're doing a lot of groundwater monitoring. We produce our groundwater protection and management report every year on the trends. We have our groundwater conservation tax credit program, and then there's a couple little projects, the irrigation projects they've been working on for a while. So this is all the wells we measure. So the blue and green, that's alluvial and Sparta wells. We're measuring those every year. So I mean, it's a huge effort to measure all those wells. Some of these other colors are different minor aquifers that we measure on a 3-year rotation. And we contract USGS to do a lot of that, helps with that, because it's a lot of field work and a lot of time in the field. So to show you some graphs, because I know you guys are enjoying my maps and my graphs here. These are 2 wells in Lonoke. This one's near Carlisle. This is actually Megan's relative's well. It goes back to 1928. This is 1928, and these actually both go back to around 1928, which I thought was really, really great. The other one is in Arkansas County, sort of east of Stuttgart ways. So you can see the one in Lonoke in 1928, it was 50 feet to the water level. And then the graph actually ends in 1961. So we lost this well in 1961, I guess. We weren't able to measure anymore, but it was at 25 feet. So about 75 feet. So about 25 feet of groundwater decline from 1928 to 1961 there in Lonoke. And then the one in Arkansas County, it was around 70 feet in 1928, and then it was around getting close to 90 feet in 1961. So another 20 feet or so of decline. So then I had to find another well to, I'm clicking this, thinking I'm changing this. The blue dots here are other wells that I found, the closest well I could find that went back far enough to kind of line up with the well I just showed you. So this well in Lonoke County, a little to the west of that other older one, it's picking up in the 80s here. It was around 100 feet in 1980, and now in 2024, it's down to 140 feet. Which is basically the base of the aquifer. That area is practically dry, or the water level is to the base, and you can see it's kind of flattened out there. It's kind of flattened out because there's really not much left. And then in Arkansas County, this is at the Rice Research Center near Stuttgart. In 1964, it was around 95 feet, 96 feet. In 2024, it's around 100 feet. So it's actually come up a few feet in recent years. It's like around 2008 or so, which we've kind of seen a trend of that in Arkansas County. It's had a little bit of a rebound. But regionally, this is what it looks like for the 2023 spring water levels. So those two wells I showed you that are still on here, but this is the depth of water. So here, this is 20 to 30 feet kind of around the rivers. Same for over here in the White River Basin. And then you go pretty quickly down to 100 feet. This is 140 feet, 130 feet around the Lonoke here. And so that's kind of what it looks like, the overall depression of the water levels. And this map over here is the percent saturated thickness. So what percentage of the aquifer is still holding water, basically. And this orange is where we start the 50% line, where it kind of turns orange right here. And did some math on the GIS, and it looks to be about 1 million acres of the Grand Prairie Arc is below 50%. And then there is the Sparta aquifer below the alluvial, separated by clay for the most part. The clay layer that underlies the alluvial aquifer. It's the deeper aquifer. It's used mainly for industrial purposes like around Pine Bluff, and drinking water. It's the main drinking water source for a lot of these communities. But it is being utilized for irrigation and for some other reasons to an extent. So I pulled some graphs of wells there. The top right graph here is in Prairie County. It goes back to the 60s. It was 100 feet in 1965 or so. Now it's around 155. So 55 feet of water level decline in the Sparta well in Prairie County there. This lower one is in Arkansas County, North Arkansas County. It was around 80 feet in the 1960s, and now it's around 160 feet. So that's about a 80-foot drop over those 60 years. And that's what the cone of depression kind of looks like. This is the old, the deeper cone of depression that some of the industrial activity in Pine Bluff through the 70s and 80s kind of created. And then there is a little bit of cone of depression here in the Lonoke, Prairie, Arkansas County areas, kind of the more irrigation heavy areas. It's kind of overshadowed by that deeper cone, but there is a depression there. This is around 160 feet. So that whole area is 160 feet, that's 140, which is below the aquifer levels for the Murrah. So that is significant. I'll kind of touch on that later. But this is the city of Wabaseka as well, right here in northeast Jefferson County. Back in 1970, it was around 175 feet or so, and now it's around 210. So it's dropped about 40 feet, but you can see it's kind of rebounded some in the last few years. And that's an actual, municipal well as opposed to irrigation wells. So this is the USGS data. I don't know if you remember, they did a huge geophysical survey of the whole delta. And this is electrical resistivity of the soil. So it's kind of like they took a MRI of the earth. If you think of it like a heat map, you ever looked at a heat map where the reds are hot and the blues are cold? So this would be the reds are very permeable, gravel, more coarse deposits that can move water. The blues are finer materials that don't move water as well. And this cross section here, across the bottom, is from the hills here in White County down this black line to the Arkansas River bottoms there, just in Deshay County area. So we're starting over here. This is kind of the mountains. You get into this blue right here. This is the Midway clay. It's like the deepest and oldest Gulf coastal plain deposit. It plunges down to the ground way deep and comes back around in Mississippi. Then you come further down to this area here where the oranges pick up. That's kind of right here. And that's the old river channel that's worked through some of this clay. Here's the clay layer in Arkansas County that's blue here. And this is actually the Sparta, Wilcox, kind of Cockfield. They come up under the alluvial aquifer here. So this is a lot to look at, I know, and I hope you can even see these lines. I wish I told them to make them thicker, but I couldn't really change them once I got this graph. But this is the base of the confining unit. So you can see in Arkansas County, this is relatively thick. This is, 50 feet like we talked about. This red line. This blue line is the water level from 2020 maybe, I forget what they told me, but you can see it's the kind of depression here, kind of in the Lonoke County, Prairie County area, kind of levels out a little bit higher, and you get down here to where the Arkansas River and White River confluence is, and you have a lot of aquifer recharge in that area, so it's kind of elevated. And then this is the base of the alluvial aquifer, this bottom line here. Those greens kind of phase out, and you get into that solid blue. That's the clay that separates the alluvial from the sparta below. So I thought that was really interesting and wanted to kind of show y'all, the geology of the area in a way that maybe you haven't really seen it before. So I hope that makes sense. And I have another view of it here. This is a west to east line from kind of Cleveland County over here across southern Jefferson County and across right in the middle of Arkansas County. So here's that Arkansas County clay layer. Here's what they're calling the base of the clay. You can kind of see those greens come in there, the higher permeability stuff. So that's more of the productive zone of the aquifer, the alluvial aquifer. There's the White River, here's the Arkansas River, and you can see, like I was saying earlier about the recharge coming from the sides, the main center of the trough here of the Dakota Depression is basically right in the middle of this large clay. So the water's having to flow in from the rivers to get to that area beneath the clay. Whereas, over in the Arkansas River channel, the water table is much higher. It's almost at the surface over there in Jefferson County because the river has that much influence over the area. And that's all I had for today. So if you have any questions about that, I'm be happy to go over it.
So this would apply to the irrigation project?
Yes. So,
What way?
well, the groundwater is depleted severely in this area. So, I wish I had put that on here. I should have put that on here. But the irrigation projects are going to affect, Lonoke County, this whole area. Essentially, it covers basically the whole area.
Still my thunder, Blake.
Do you have that?
That
Okay,
was
Megan's
my
gonna talk
thunder.
about that. But, you're gonna supplement all the surface water to these areas that are running out of groundwater. Some don't have groundwater anymore, or they're having to drill very deep and it's not very cost effective to pump water anymore. So, if we can get them using that and not pumping deeper water, we hope that we'll see recharge to the aquifer itself and we can reach some kind of equilibrium where we have some aquifer, some sustained aquifer for future use. Go ahead.
Has anyone done a study on the effects of the thousands of acres of reservoirs that's been built and are using groundwater and how much that's affected the water table?
Not that I know of, not specific.
And the only other problem there is the irrigation systems will let them keep water in those instead of using what they've got and then have to go to their wells. So, I thought it'd be interesting to see what effect the federal government's money that went to build these reservoirs and tailwater recovery and all that sort of thing has affected that bottom.
It's really, really hard to quantify because there's so many factors. We don't really have all the data. We don't know where all the reservoirs are. We don't necessarily know how much water that's saved. It's a lot to gather and
Maybe just pick a section or
case study. Yeah. Well, they are trying to do that with the groundwater initiative that the kind of Arkansas Research Service is doing with the USDA and the USGS, but they haven't really published any findings on it. But they were kind of looking at reservoirs and things people have done, specific conservation practices, and what kind of impact that's had on the water table. But I think the problem is, if you have on an on-farm scale with a problem that's so regional, it's kind of hard to get the impacts of that one thing when the problem is so widespread.
I know in my farm situation, we farm fish.
They gotta have water?
We reuse all of our inside water. We can't use outside water sources because of our inspection program.
Okay.
But I have about 13 reservoirs farmers have built around me that have seemed to help my well situation.
Okay. Maybe we need to come study your wells then.
Well, Blake, I mean, in one of the graphs that Blake showed, we have seen a rebound in several wells since about 2018. And the big question is, what is causing that rebound in some of those wells? But it's pretty consistent at 2018, seems to be kind of the magic
Yeah,
year.
2012, sometimes it picks up. I mean, it was very wet from around 2015 through, 2022 or so.
Yeah.
So we're kind of, I mean, obviously they've invested so much in conservation practices in the area, and then we have a wet period, so it's just kind of a compounding effect. Maybe they had more surface water in general, the reservoirs were filling up more. But it's kind of hard to say it was the reservoirs, or if it was just, kind of mainly driven by the precipitation. It's complex, and
Well, for about 60 days this summer, there was no water available to put in those reservoirs.
yeah.
And that was a crucial point. With need water irrigation systems.
So Chris, has there been any more movement on those three cities in Jefferson County that Granbury had talked to?
Join? No, not that I'm aware of. That's a big question. So, I mean,
We have a funding application for regionalization for one of those three
Just
and a
one?
neighboring, another one close, but not one of those three.
All right, we got Megan Perkins up to bat now. She's gonna talk about the irrigation project overview.
So we have a field trip this afternoon. We're gonna take a look at this, and I'm gonna hopefully try to explain a little bit of how Blake's data and things apply to these irrigation projects and why, we did these irrigation projects. So Blake did show this map, so the red with Lone Oak Prairie, Jefferson, Arkansas, is the critical groundwater area. So around 1915, or by 1915, 10 years roughly after rice farming started in East Arkansas, the alluvial aquifer began to be tapped at a rate that it couldn't keep up with. So the groundwater problem was identified in the 30s, as Blake said. It was detailed in a project study in the mid-80s, and in 1990, Arkansas Water Plan. And as a result of that water plan, we got the three critical groundwater areas, Arkansas, Grand Prairie, and Cache. And in that area, or when an area is determined to be a critical groundwater area, it recognizes the existence of water quality and quantity problems and encourages local interest to develop a plan of action to address the issue. And Blake went into kind of how the recharge of those aquifers and stuff work there. So with that designation of a critical groundwater area allowed for local folks or local entities in those areas to develop the plan for the projects. And the state water plan, current state water plan, projects that by the year 2050, the region's aquifers under sustainable pumping conditions will only be able to supply about 20% of the water demand. So once the two irrigation projects are complete, they would reduce this gap by providing surface water to approximately 15% of the acreage in that area. So here are the boundaries, and we'll get a little closer look into where these boundaries are of the Biomeda irrigation project and the Grand Prairie irrigation project. And all the little dots and things go into what Commissioner Anderson was talking about of the conservation efforts that have been put in place, and we know this through our tax credit program. So it's not all encompassing of all of the conservation efforts that are in there, but what we know based off what tax credits have been applied for that area. And that also plays into, because a big component of these projects is on-farm storage, because the water is not on demand from canal, from bio necessarily. It's meant to be integrated with an on-farm storage and irrigation system to deliver that water. So there's been several impoundment, surface water conversions, land leveling efforts done in this area. And this is for about a 7-year period there, which I know as someone that's from there, there's been a lot of land leveling and reservoirs put in there over the last 2-3 decades. Let's see, click too fast. So, Biomeda on the left, Lone Oak, Jefferson, Prairie, Arkansas, Grand Prairie on the right. So they're roughly about the same acreage amount, 265,000 acres approximately for Biomeda of irrigated cropland, 247 acres of irrigated cropland for the Grand Prairie. And these two projects were part of the 1950, where they were Flood Control Act, where they originally were authorized. Then they were deauthorized in 1986, and then reauthorized in 1996. And part of their goals of the project, and this is a combination of the two, is groundwater protection and conservation, ag water supply, and waterfowl management. And then this little purple section here is the Plum Bayou irrigation project that's operated for 30 years. And that's a diversion project taking Arkansas River water and distributing it to about 14,000 acres in that area. And that project has been a huge success for that little area there. So we cannot do this alone. The local entities cannot do this alone. So these are our partners in both the projects. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, USDA and RCS. On the federal side, also would be remiss if I did not mention our congressional delegation in our federal support. They've been instrumental in funding Senator Cotton, Senator Bozeman, Representative Crawford, and their staffs in helping us and the districts obtain funding for these projects. For Arkansas, the Arkansas Department of Agriculture, Parks, Heritage, and Tourism, Game and Fish Commission, and then the local entity, White River and Biomeda. These groups meet strategically to align with the Avedas Buffet in Carlisle. The second Wednesday of the second month of the quarter, all year round. And we get together and touch base on kind of just high level what's going on. And in the interim of that, we have a lot of technical meetings because there are a lot of things now going on, as you'll see here shortly, with these projects. Also on the state side, we work closely with RDOT and Energy, with highway crossings and then electricity and all the electrical things with the substations. So to date, these are the investments from states and federal partners into the projects. So approximately $118 million for the Grand Prairie project through loans and grants. $188 million from the Army Corps of Engineers, $75 million from USDA, NRCS, PL 566, and then $5 million in ARPA. For Biomeda, that's $95 million in loans and grants from the Arkansas Department of Agriculture, $171 million from the Army Corps of Engineers, $40 million through PL 566 through NRCS, and then they also had an RCPP for a couple of pump stations for $800,000, and then ARPA of $5 million as well. So the Biomeda project, Arkansas Prairie, Lone Oak, Jefferson, and Pulaski counties, approximately 863,000 acres. 265,000 of that are irrigated cropland, 19,000 acres of fish ponds, and it's the largest production of bait fish, like Mr. Anderson and his family grow there in the area. And then it's a major wintering area for waterfowl. And this project is designed to protect and preserve the alluvial and Sparta aquifers. It has the water supply component in it, and it's also flood control and waterfowl management. So that is it has a couple of extra components outside of Grand Prairie. It is designed to include channel improvements, a pumping station, and includes features for that waterfowl management. It was authorized in 1996 by the Water Resource Development Act. It was first funded for construction in 2010. So There is the Marion pump station, which we will see today, and a little 5 meter flood control pump station, which is in Raydale. And then this is a, control structure, Canal 1000. So there's 4 pump station facilities, 107 miles of man-made canals, 260 miles of work on existing channels, 465 miles of pipeline, more than 500 control structures, 10,000 acres of native prairie grass, also improvements to the biome WMA, moist soil habitat, and riparian buffers are the main project features. So current work, through the NRCS PL 566 funds, there's been the clean out of Indian Bayou. Total clean out would be approximately 37 miles, there's about 16 miles of that, that have been completed. Canal 1000 3.2 is the next phase of canal to be constructed. The picture with the very pretty green grass on it is the completion of Canal 1000 3.1. That was quite a bit of work to get that one across the finish line, to have those levees look as nice as they do, but the Corps of Engineers worked with the contractor to get that done. So 3.2 is expected to start construction or award contract for construction next year upon completion of real estate acquisition. It will be 3 miles of canal construction, 5 siphon structures, turnouts, and 3 stilling wells. Then we have the Wabaseka Bayou clean out. I want to go back to Indian Bayou. The picture down here on the right, bottom right, is of the Indian Bayou clean out. And it's kind of a really neat process of how that's being done with an amphibious traco. Floats and does all the things. Tony Ramick and Ed Schweimer, they sing this gentleman's praises all the time on the work that he's done. It's very quick, very efficient. And there's no telling what he has snagged out of that bayou. Wabaseka Bayou is the next clean out phase. And it's approximately 33.5 miles of clean out. And that work will be split between NRCS and the Corps of Engineers to do. The Highway 161 and 165 bridges are expected to be completed here in a couple of months. And then all of this is part of phase 1 of Biomeda. And that completion will include approximately about 100,000 acres in that area. So if we look at, I don't think I have a phase map in here, but I'm gonna back up just a little bit. So this phase 1 essentially is this side of the project, is where this work is being done and will be completed. All right, next up we have the Grand Prairie project, Arkansas, Prairie, Lonoke, and Monroe County. So these marry up well there and meet up in Lonoke and Prairie counties. This project mainly is a ag water supply project, is the main component of it. It was also authorized in 1996 and has been underway since 2001, with the initial start being $25 million for on-farm conservation work. Construction started on the DeVault Bluff Pump Station, 2003-2004 timeline. Has ran into several hurdles to get through, but hopefully we will have that pump station completed very, very soon. Project features 1,640 CFS pump station down there in the bottom right, 102 miles of man-made canals, 290 miles of pipeline, more than 300 water control structures, and 573 on-farm reservoirs. So back to the conservation work and the impoundments of reservoirs, they are integral for the delivery system of this water to farmers. So the current work, this is a beautiful picture to me. This has been a long time coming for my time that's worked on this project, but that is the pad going in for the electrical substation, and then the pump station work on that. So the first 7 miles of phase 1 canal are completed from the regulating reservoir to Highway 63. Energy is working on the electrical substation, and CJ Mahan is working on the pump station. They are the contractor working through the re-procurement for that through a contract with the Corps of Engineers. There's 7 county road crossings that will be constructed as part of phase 1. 2 state highway bridges, Highway 70 and Highway 63. And those will go out to bid, upon the completion of some utility relocations that are going on right now. Phase one consists of approximately 12 miles of primary irrigation distribution canal, and 7 miles of that have been completed. And then that also in phase one is about 30 miles of pipeline that should be completed this year, weather dependent. It's been a little rainy for some of that stuff to go on. And then phase one water delivery is expected in 2026, which will deliver water to approximately 50,000 acres. And then, well, here, I'll stop here before we get to Washita. So any questions about Alameda or Grand Prairie?
Has there been problems, or do you see future problems? I guess there haven't been problems, or the progress wouldn't be there on acquiring land and right of way. I mean, if, I can't, one thing amazes me about this is that many people have cooperated on right of ways.
So that is a responsibility of the local sponsor of the district boards, by Alameda and White River. And I will say that they both have, as construction and kind of they saw construction happening as federal funds came into play, and they started working through that, they really started messaging and meeting with the landowners and folks in the area. Because these projects have kind of been, you know, stop and go for several years. And so people tend to lose a little faith in that at times. But when they start seeing the construction and the progress of it, their confidence grows in it. And with the current water situation, as Blake went over, what becomes a depression, the deeper the wells, the expense of water, people they want to know, when's it coming to me? When's it get here?
So,
William Mike can speak to that some too.
If I can add to that, I'm on White River Irrigation District. We have had no problems attaining land to build this channel so far. And it seems like the closer you get that ditch to their farm, the more accepting they are to be built.
Okay, because I can just see, you got 10 landowners and 1 or 2 say, no, I don't want that coming across.
Well, there's been a little bit of that, but if you're trying to, and we haven't done this, we're not trying to accumulate land 20 miles from a pump station. We're trying to accumulate land adjacent to stuff we've already built on. And when they see that much progress and that much money being spent right next door to their farm, it changes the psyche.
So they feel like it's working.
Most of them do. We've got a couple absentee landlords that I anticipate to be some trouble, but, we'll just work it out when we get there.
It does not come without its challenges by no means.
Do you have the right of condemnment?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
We would rather not use it, and we have not used it thus far.
Well, certainly.
Last ditch effort. It's, I will say with both local sponsors, they do everything they possibly can to work with the landowner, to make sure the landowner is comfortable with the land acquisition or the easement or right of entry, right of way, whatever that may be. And our federal partners have been very helpful in that aspect too. NRCS does a lot of work across this landscape, and so they know a lot of these landowners. And sometimes it takes NRCS or even the Corps of Engineers coming out to say, hey, this is what's gonna happen, this is what we're gonna do, these are the benefits you receive from this. And this is how it plays into that reservoir you put in 10 years ago, or however long ago, or the pipelines that you put in through your equip contract, or whatever it might be. So it's a lot of education, a lot of just sitting down, talking through things and having those conversations, not just coming in there all of a sudden showing up one day and throwing flags down and the landowners not being aware. That's very important to the local entity that those landowners are invested and involved.
Our district has also been very good about having meetings and inviting all these landlords to the conversation, to the table, and explaining everything, where we're at on money, where we're at on project development, where we're at on, walking this thing through.
So for the most part, these people see the value of this.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I can just see, on the news all the time, how much trouble, of course, this is not on that grandiose scale, but how much trouble you have building a pipeline from Canada to Texas. I mean, it's impossible.
Yes, sir.
I think the one thing that's unique is, as Blake pointed out, there is a water issue there. I think everybody recognizes that there's a water issue. This is part of the solution to the issue, is to provide surface water.
And Megan, I'm gonna ask, what's the long-term outlook for continued PL 566 funding? Do you have a feel for it?
I do not. I would hope that we see possibly an increase in it, but as you know, there's lots of water trouble going on out west. There's a big look at that. So we hope we'd get some attention on that. But that is more as an NRCS thing, and obviously politics and farm bills and all those sorts of things play into that. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on
Is
that.
the funding increased in the farm bill, or do you know?
We don't know yet what that looks like this year. And actually, PL 566, if I'm not mistaken, if anybody's online from NRCS, they can correct me too. That funding actually is not part of the farm bill, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but I'll check on that.
What did you say that was, Bruce? What kind of funding?
PL
566, that's public law.
It's the watershed management planning and construction.
Yeah.
So so the first step of PL 566, and I'll go through this quickly because
Yeah,
Chris is telling me we gotta go, time wise, but
I'm
it
sorry,
is.
Megan, that I stopped.
Oh, no, you're
Question
fine.
there.
No, you're fine.
We are gonna have to go.
It's planning dollars that then turn into construction dollars once the plan's done. Yeah, well, very quickly,
Watershed improvement districts that you know again,
Yes,
that was
okay.
built with PL 566.
thank you.
well, if I can go forward again. I was gonna touch base on the Washita River project, which is a successful diversion project, in South Arkansas. Yeah, it's okay. We'll go through it. And I think a lot of you are aware of that project and heard us talk about it before. But it's a diversion project to, start the slideshow and I'll go through it really quickly. But it was determined to be a critical groundwater area in Union County. And the local group got together there to see how they could address that issue. And there was a lot of industrial use, with the water. And so very similarly to, these projects, there's a pump station that's been built, to carry that water into that area. And they've seen a significant, so this is a 10-year water level change, for that area. But they, was a $65 million infrastructure investment, that the Union County Water Conservation Board, invested with federal partners as well.
Is that part of that pumping station that sends the water to energy?
Yes.
Yes. Maybe not.
Might notice how much water table come up since it's.
There is a chart there if I can,
Yeah.
if the technology would, this was an area that was in 1996, the designated critical groundwater area. Then they formed their board in 1999 and, right there. So there's where, so the board forms. This was the withdrawal rates. This gray line is the withdrawal rates. The groundwater level is the dark blue line here. So you can see that when these different industries got on board, with converting from their wells to this surface water, that water level came up.
The point is it works. I mean, and they were at critical mass, that's their drinking water source too. So they had competing uses, I mean, and so when they converted the surface water, I mean, that put them in a much more sustainable, situation for their groundwater, for drinking water.
Let me click to the next slide. But so there's where all the well locations are, in that area. Nearly every well in that region has rebounded since 2004, or recovered since 2004. And the wells closest to that area, kind of like Neil said about the reservoirs and stuff that have gone on around him, the wells closest to those have seen the most recovery.
Megan, you did a wonderful job. You ought to be on TV.
But I appreciate that. We went through questions, so I'm done, and we will get to see all this in person this afternoon.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, just
Yes.
real quick, who was it that questioned the ease of the right-of-way acquisition?
I did.
You did, okay. What I have run into dealing with cities, and of course Chris and Debbie knows, that the major drawback we're having, or pushback we're having right now, is communities not wanting to release their water systems,
They're not wanting to do what?
release their water systems.
That's what consolidation of systems,
Consolidation,
or regionalization of systems.
but we're working through that, aren't we, Chris?
We are.
But that's where the major problems are coming in.
Okay, we're gonna go to the, Water Well Committee update. Mike's gonna do that for us, and we might pay attention here because he will have an action item in this. Mike, we appreciate you, buddy.
All right. The regular meeting of the Waterwell Construction Committee met July 31st, 2024, at the Illinois Room of Arkansas Department of Agriculture and Natural Resource Division. Complaints and inspections, the division staff conducted 2 re-inspections, visited 6 water well contractors, trained 2 on how to use the map to find well information. In addition, staff assisted landowners with finding well information. Staff is working with the Department of Agriculture IT staff to create an online testing portal for water well licensing. William Young of Young's Custom Service was invited to attend the committee meeting via Zoom on violations of not turning in well reports, not having a registered operator on the job site, having 2 unpermitted rigs. The committee recommended he be fined $250 for not turning in well reports and $250 for not having a registered operator on the job site. Mr. Young has since submitted several well reports and registered the 2 additional rigs. Jacob Davis of Davis Water Well was invited to attend the committee meeting via registered mail due to complaints from landowners of charging a $4,000 deposit and then failing to construct a well in a reasonable amount of time. Mr. Davis has turned in very few well reports and is only licensed to do drilling, but advertises as doing both drilling and pump installation. A warning letter was mailed to Mr. Davis stating complaints that he could be turned over to law enforcement for some of the alleged violations, and that he submits all well reports, and that further complaints may result in fines and revocation of his license. As of this date, he has not renewed his license. New applicants, we had 2 new driller applicants were registered, 5 pump installer applicants were registered, 2 driller apprentice applicants, and 4 pump installer apprentice applicants were approved. The committee approved a request to waive the 5-year license requirement to supervise an apprentice as requested by Brandon Jackson of Arkansas Filtration Systems. Mr. Jackson was a registered apprentice for 11 years, and he has held his pump installer registration for 3.5 years. Recommendation to the Natural Resource Commission action item. I want to approve Brandon Jackson, Arkansas Filtration Systems request to waive the 5-year supervisory rule with all his years of experience being licensed with the Arkansas Water Well. And to approve 2 fines of $250 each for Young's Custom Service for not turning in well reports and not having a registered operator on the job site.
That Young's Custom Service out of Phillips County.
That's where it's at, they are.
And in addition to those $250 penalties, the 2 of those, it's turn in all your reports since the date of last licensure, which would have been last year in 2023, to the execution of this consent agreement when he agrees to it. So, and there's a time period in the consent agreement as well.
So he doesn't sound very cooperative.
I move we accept staff recommendation.
I'll make a second.
Mike, you got another comment on that?
I do have a question, not on the motion, but on another part of this report.
Okay, all right, let's take care of this motion, then we'll go back to that. Okay, so we have the motion second here. If there's no discussion or questions on it, all approve? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no? Okay, Joanne.
Okay, on this Jacob Davis, he charged $4,000 deposit. Now, did he come through with all of his wells? Did he construct all?
I don't think so.
So what is the repercussion there?
In this particular case, he did end up refunding the landowner the $4,000. But we had reports that he was basically asking the same thing for just about anybody who would call on him. So it's kind of general bad practice. And then, this particular guy that informed us about this, he was waiting for like 6 months, and he basically wouldn't contact him, and he wouldn't come out there and do the well when he originally told him he was going to do the well within a couple of weeks of him getting the deposit.
So no one was out of their money?
No, they got their money back.
Very good, okay.
sometime.
Second question, on new applicants, Mike, is that a good number? Are y'all satisfied with that, or is that,
Well, it's probably a little low.
is that low?
I think
I don't know what the norm is, so,
it comes and goes.
okay.
This commission, I'll say this too, this was between the July 31st commission meeting and the June, was it mid-June that we had it? So it was a very short window of time between these reports. So it is a low number because it was a short reporting period there. We've had a few more since then.
Thank you, Mike.
I have one other item.
Yes, sir.
We'd like to add another member to the construction committee. I'd like to nominate David Gilbert. David is from Mena. David's been in the drilling business for a number of years. He's on several boards. He'd be a great addition, and he's willing to serve.
Do we need to take a vote on that? Okay, y'all. Hear Mike's request
To
here,
have a motion, need a second.
and we have a second. All right, to add, Mr. David Gilbert to the Water Well Committee, all in favor, yes?
Yes.
Opposed, no. That does pass, so, good work on that, Mike. All right, so, we have, Debbie Dixon coming up to tell us some pretty interesting things about the state revolving fund bond resolution. Can't you get an acronym for that or something?
No, then
It's
you
the
have
SRF bonds. Is that better?
Besides that, Debbie needs, she needs her own acronym.
I got plenty of acronyms. Which one do you want to start with?
And then we would have to ask what the acronyms stand for.
Let's just go with DD. DD.
So I have my PowerPoint backwards. My PowerPoint starts with the funding recommendations
Well,
and
that's right.
ends with the SRF resolution.
We
Do
ain't
you
got
want
no-
to do them backwards, or do you want me to do?
We
them
can
according to
think,
the
we can think backwards, we can think forwards or sideways. We want you to do it the way you want to do it.
Debbie, I can go wherever you wanna go first.
Well, with
and
the
this-
delays, it's easier to just go through in the normal process. So first, we'll start with the financial recommendations, if that's okay with you guys.
That's okay.
First up, we have the Arkansas Environmental Training Academy for a wastewater operator training grant. This is something new that's now available out of our Clean Water State Revolving Fund grant dollars. We're allowed now to take 2% of the federal funds and allocate it for technical assistance. EPA is very picky about what that has to be. This is one of a couple of options that we have to provide that technical assistance. The training center will offer operator certification training around the state. They'll do at least 4 classes a month, and they'll offer them in a variety of offers. So you can do in person, you can do online, you can do a Zoom one with a live instructor. So they'll have several options to meet those operator certification requirements. So we're recommending an amount up to $232,840 in federal grant dollars to the Environmental Training Academy. Next up, we have Newton County on behalf of Compton Water Association. And before I go into the rest of these, I just want to remind you and everybody else that July 1, 2024 was the first due date for entities to submit their rate studies for Act 605 for providers of customers of 500 fewer or less. So these recommendations will all be contingent on their complying with Act 605. So again, Newton County, on behalf of Compton Water Association, we're recommending a loan in an amount of $83,070 out of the Water Development Fund. This is matching dollars for their ARPA project. And here is their budget, and you can see they got the $241,950 out of ARPA, and they need the $83,000 match dollars for their project. Next up, we have Newton County on behalf of Nail Swain Water Association. We're recommending a loan in an amount of $74,160 out of the Water Development Fund. And again, this too is matching dollars for their ARPA project.
Those are, funds, are those some that, that we gave them?
Yes.
Earlier on, okay.
Yes, yes.
So this is in addition to what?
Yes.
There, okay.
So here's the budget, and again, you can see the $215,325 of ARPA funds, meeting their match requirement of $74,160 from you guys today. Next up, we have Newton County on behalf of Nail Swain. Again, this is for a separate tank project. We're recommending a loan in the amount of $74,160 out of the Water Development Fund, and again, this is another ARPA project. You can see their ARPA funds, $215,325, so they need the matching funds of $74,160. So those are all of my recommendations for new funding. Next, I have recommendations for changes in terms. Did you want to do your vote on the first section or continue till all the way to the end?
Y'all will just go on and do the vote on everything? Is that okay, or is that not okay?
That's fine with me.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Okay, so next we're gonna go through our changes in terms. Central Arkansas Water had a little bit of bid overruns on their big project, so we're recommending up to an additional $80 million in loan as a drinking water state revolving fund.
That is a little bit of an over.
Just a little bit. When you look at the scale of the project, it's not as scary, but it's still a big number. So as you can see, here's the $80 million that they needed, and they did rearrange their budget a little bit to accommodate that. They did some value engineering as well to reduce the scope of the project to get it down as much as they could. So we're recommending that $80 million, so they'll have in total a loan for $230 million through Arkansas Natural Resources.
How much of that, ARPA money do we still have left? Do you know?
Pretty much been all allocated. We'll be down to less than a couple million.
I mean, the wait list pretty well knocked that out.
Yeah.
We've got
Yeah, that's
some
what I
on
was
the way.
getting at is, it seems like we're funding, which may not be a thing in the world wrong with it, and I'm just reading more into it than what is, but it seems like we're going back giving folks that's already got money, and you got a waiting list.
So weren't those off the wait
Yes,
list?
those
So
are all off the wait list.
they got funded off the wait list, which made it possible for them to move forward, but they had a match component that they had to meet. And so this is them getting their match component, if that makes sense. So if you had to do a 25% match, if they didn't have that in cash on hand, then they had to come back from us and get a loan to make the 25% match or 50% match. Because ARPA had a match component, a 0 for Beaumont and 25% and then up to 50%. Does that make sense?
Let's just move on, that's all right, we ain't got time anyway, but.
Okay, next up, we have the city of Helena, West Helena. They're actually asking for a scope modification. So they have an existing approval for $11 million loan out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. They asked us to incorporate some additional items into their project, things such as operating valves, distribution system rehab, clear well roof, rehabbing some existing wells, looking at a new well site and new wells in addition to that. The funding remains the same, but these items were not in their scope, and as they're investigating further, they're realizing that they are going to need those items as well.
Will this take care of them?
No, they will need additional funding.
Was that a loan?
This is all loan funds that you guys approved in February, if I believe correctly. So this, and again, this one, the loan's already approved, they're just asking us to expand the scope.
I know they was having arguments over their, they increased their water rates and they, wasn't they arguing over that?
Yes. I believe the last I heard they had, rescinded the rate increase.
Yeah.
And they're waiting for additional information to be able to make an informed decision. That's the last I've heard. Next up, we have the Lone Oak White Public Water Authority. This is for, again, change in scope, no change in funding. They have an existing $12 million loan from the Drinking Water Revolving Fund. And they're asking to include a transmission line in their tank project that was not originally included. Again, no change in the funding. They're just adding a transmission line. Since they moved from an elevated tank to a ground tank, they had some savings, so they are able to ask for including the transmission line. City of Magazine, they're asking for additional funding. We're recommending an amount of up to $2,046,080 in a loan from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. Here is their cost breakdown. So then total, they'll have a just about $3.4 million loan out of the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. Mountaintop and sewer, excuse me, I always say sewer. Mountaintop Suburban Improvement District number 66. They're looking for additional funding in an amount up to $570,000 in a loan from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. And again, here's their cost breakdown. So their new loan will be a total of about $2.7 million. Tri-County Regional Water Distribution District, they're looking for additional funding in an amount up to $363,185 in a loan from the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund for bid overrun. Here's their cost breakdown. You can see the full $363,000 was for construction, for a grand total of about $3.9 million in loan funding. I believe we have one more, no, that was it. So this is my first set of funding recommendations and changes in scope and or additional funding. If you guys would like to go ahead and do your.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Okay, does anybody need reviewed on any of these projects, whether we want to accept the recommendation or not? And you do recommend it?
Yes, I recommend all of those. Yes, sorry, my wording was off a little
These
today.
projects will be completed by the end of 26.
The ARPA one.
The ARPA ones,
The ARPA ones.
some of these are not necessarily ARPA.
I move we accept staff recommendation.
Second.
Discussion on that question. About the total deal or about any one project? All right, if there's no discussion, we're gonna take a vote on it. All in favor, yes?
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
Okay, next I have my report on the obligations. This is just, where did my de-obligations go? Here it is.
Do we have that?
This is to let you know who has declined funding that we previously approved. So here's our report on the obligations. All of these folks decided not to accept these loan funds. All of these were loan dollars that we offered them.
Could we get a copy of them too?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
What's the total of those?
17, 21.
340.
About 30.
A lot of these are ones that we funded right after ARPA, and they were trying to decide whether or not they could really afford a loan.
Do we ever ask them, what's their reason for declining funding?
Most of them will tell you that they can't afford the loan,
The rate increase that.
the rate
goes with
increase
loan.
that goes in order to take the loan.
Okay.
So they decline the funding so that they have the opportunity to reapply at a later date and maybe get some principal forgiveness.
Okay, so Debbie, now those funds roll back into,
Those become available for other folks to apply for loan funds, and maybe we won't have to borrow as much.
is that those people on the waiting list?
No, these are not, none of these are ARPA.
None of those are.
These are all out of the Water Development Fund or one of the state revolving
Okay.
funds. None of these are ARPA. ARPA funds automatically go to the waiting list. Anything that's de-obligated automatically goes to the waiting list. So let's go back to my, state revolving fund, clean water and drinking water, the resolution of intent. So I have Ryan Bowman here. We have questions for him. He's from Friday Firm, and they are our legal counsel, our bond counsel on our state revolving fund. So as you know, last year we issued state revolving fund bonds for the first time in 20 years, I think it was. And in order to do our next set of bonds, which we'll probably have to do around January or February, we'll probably have to request another $60 million to issue in bond funds. To prepare for that, we're doing this resolution of intent. What this allows us to do, and Ryan's gonna correct me if I get this wrong, is any expenditures we have between now and the issuance of the bond, assuming you pass this resolution, that are not expended out of federal funds or other bond issues, we can request to get those dollars reimbursed from the bond proceeds to help us meet our bond expenditure requirements. So when you issue a tax-exempt bond, you have to spend 30% of the bond proceeds within 12 months of the issue. This would help us meet that quicker. It would replenish our state revolving fund with those bond proceeds, any that we spent, and then allow us to meet that and then move forward with the rest of our program. Does that make sense? Questions?
Is that legal?
That's correct.
So,
Where do you need to take action on this?
yes, you need to pass the resolution.
I so move.
Second.
All right. So do y'all have questions for these two experts on this? If not, no questions, all in favor, yes?
Yes.
Opposed, no.
Thank you.
The resolution passes.
Hey Debbie, I just want to clarify one thing. I'm sorry, but it's because questions I get from cities.
Yeah.
The ARPA funding, if you got money on the wait list, it is because you had already had your project rolling and it can be completed by the end of 26. If you had not begun anything on your project, even if you were on the wait list, then you were not considered because there was no way you could complete it by the end of 26. Is that correct?
That is correct. So we polled, everybody that was on the wait list to get a status update on the project.
Okay.
Because with such we're seeing how long it's taken. And think about this, you all approved a lot of those ARPA projects in 22.
Mm-hmm.
We're in 24. And there's still a lot of them that haven't really even got started yet, haven't really even got going. They're going through the design and permitting and all those phases. So the ones that have gone through design and gone through permitting, and some of it too depends on the scale of the project, how big and complex the project is. And so we polled everybody, we did an analysis of the polling, and we had to go with the projects that we felt could be shovel ready and move fast.
I don't know if any of the other commissioners are having any questions from the wait list funding or not. But what about you, Bruce? You have any?
I haven't had any questions about it,
I
not
guess,
since last year.
But you all funded 41 of those waitlist projects with the additional funds that came in, so that was a pretty good chunk. I think there were 60 some of them, so that was a pretty good chunk of projects.
We were thinking of like top 5 or 6 or so would get funded with.
Yeah, I mean, without those additional funds that came from the legislature, we wouldn't have been able to fund maybe one. We might have funded 1 or 2
Yeah.
projects with the obligated funds. But this allowed us to take a big bite out of that.
that is good.
And the thing is just because those projects didn't get funded, they could have applied and can apply for principal forgiveness funding. How many of them did that, I don't know, but we'll award you all will award principal forgiveness funding in November. They could always come back around next November and ask. And that takes that really tight deadline of ARPA off of them if they were to apply for SRF funding.
What happens to these funds since they aren't gonna be applied at this time?
You talking about the deobligated funds? Those are all, they just go back into the fund. So
Which fund?
The one that they were
they
allocated.
originated out of. So those were all water development, clean water, drinking water.
Yeah, it was the 2 state programs, water development fund and water sewer solid waste. So when, and Mr. Zaki gave his, presentation on the financial status, he mentioned a couple of deobligations. So that's where those are going back into those funds. And then the state revolving funds, they'll just be unallocated so that we don't have to borrow money to do those ones.
But we never return funds. We expend everything.
Yes. ARPA's the only one really where we have a risk of having to return those.
And for the other programs, for the state programs and the state revolving funds, we do a reimbursement, so they don't get the money up front. So there's never a point anymore where we have to go to the borrower and say, oh, well, your project's done, I need that $30,000 back you didn't spend. So it's all dispersed on an incremental basis, and so if they never close their loan, it just goes back in the available funding for the next applicant to look at.
Thanks a lot, Debbie.
Thank you.
Excellent job. Is there any other business that we need to consider? Well, let's talk about the field trip.
Yeah, so, we had a field trip today to the conservation district, or not conservation district, irrigation projects. We have 2 state vehicles to take those that will not be taking their own cars. I know since we're going east, several of you live east and won't want to come back to Little Rock. But for those that don't want to take their own cars and have to come back here, we will provide transportation. My recommendation is get a cup of coffee, go to the restroom, all of those things here before we leave. Goal will be to leave here about 10 o'clock.
Not gonna have access to a restaurant where we're going.
We will, but
No, we forgot to put one of those in the
We're not
pump station.
making-
there is one at Bobby, there will be one at lunch, but my
Is there any
recommendation
trees out there?
My recommendation is always go before you go, so,
In other
we'll
words,
have
we won't
water.
be making pit stops for you.
We will have water, we will have lunch, we'll have lunch at the groundwater security office in Carlisle, we're getting that from Nick's Barbecue. So we'll go to Bimeda first, then we'll go have lunch, and then we'll do Grand Prairie, and then for those that are coming back here, we will transport them back here, to this,
Bruce, what do we
this
want to do?
location.
Do we want to take our own or ride the state vehicle?
Whatever you want to do.
I don't know.
We ain't
If you ride in the state vehicle, you get, some like tour guides.
Driver be chauffeured, driver
I
be
just
chauffeured.
need,
Who's gonna be the driver?
mileage from Lake Village to here.
I've got one vehicle, and Tate has.
Okay, you will.
Let's go with
Depends on who all's going.
Let's go with the people that know what they're talking about, Bruce. We never did that.
If you plan to ride with us, the staff, raise your hand right now so that I can get a head count for sure. So we got 2. All right, we'll take one vehicle.
You don't take 2, you can't drive it.
Gotta separate those 2.
Put him in the back.
Are we through?
Yeah, we're gonna adjourn. We're just, I declare it adjourned. Or do we need to vote on that? I declare it adjourned.
If everybody will hang around
We
just
got
a
a
little.
couple of-
Recording stopped.
You're trapped.